إنك مش بعيد، ما تشيلش هم ولا تشعر بضيق. قول يا الله اهدي لي يا قلبي عشان أتوب، امحي الذنوب واهدي للطريق، نور للطريق، نور للطريق، نور للطريق.
In the radio studios, the technicians, the entertainers, the commentators, the administrative personnel daily unite their efforts in the creation of programs to please and entertain a vast radio public.
We awaken to it in the morning, we set our clocks by it, we dress according to the weather reports. We listen to radio for news, for entertainment. It keeps us informed every minute of every day. That's radio for you, close to every member of the family. From its very birth, radio has been a public servant. It will continue its dedicated service throughout the years to come.
You're tuned to CJAM 99.1 FM, Windsor, Detroit.
This holiday season, plan a safe ride home for yourself, your family, and your guests. Visit arrivealive.org for some party smart tips, like having alcohol-free drinks and lots of snacks, planning for guests to stay over, and keeping extra cash for taxis. Find out more about supporting sober driving online at arrivealive.org or inquire at your local beer store. Happy holidays and thank you from Arrive Alive, Drive Sober.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Islamdunk Show. I'm your host, Tariq Ibrahim, and we have a fantastic show lined up for you today. We've been away for you for a little bit, so we are extremely regretful and we do miss you extremely. But before we begin, inshallah, we'd like to start off with a little compilation of adhiyya that I got here. So we'll listen to a couple of nice dua and we'll resume the show, inshallah. And you're listening to the Islamdunk Show every Friday morning at 8:30 right here on CJAM 99.1 FM.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أنتم بصحبة ابن الخطاب من الدمام.
اللهم لك الحمد أنت نور السماوات والأرض.
اللهم لك الحمد أنت نور السماوات
ولك الحمد أنت قيوم السماوات والأرض.
ولك الحمد أنت قيوم السماوات والأرض.
ولك الحمد أنت رب السماوات والأرض ومن فيهن.
ولك الحمد أنت رب السماوات والأرض ومن فيهن.
أنت الحق ووعدك الحق وقولك الحق ولقاؤك حق والجنة حق والنار حق والساعة حق. اللهم لك أسلمنا وبك آمنا. اللهم لك أسلمنا وبك آمنا. وعليك توكلنا وإليك أنبنا وبك خاصمنا وإليك حاكمنا فاغفر لنا ما قدمنا وما أخرنا وما أسررنا وما أعلنا
وما أسررنا وما أعلنا
أنت إلهنا لا إله إلا أنت
أنت إلهنا لا إله إلا أنت
اللهم لك الحمد بما خلقتنا ورزقتنا
اللهم لك الحمد بما خلقتنا ورزقتنا
وهديتنا وعلمتنا وأنقذتنا وفرجت عنا لك الحمد بالإسلام ولك الحمد بالقرآن ولك الحمد بالأهل والمال والمعافاة
And we're back on the Islamdunk Show 99.1 FM CJM. I know everybody was most likely in the mood and going with the dua, but unfortunately, I can't just have a full show of dua, although if recommended, I can't see why not. It's amazing recitation and very melodic. So inshallah, we'll be going through these every so often on the show. But what I really wanted to go over and continue covering were the duties of brotherhood or sisterhood in Islam. And we touched upon this a couple of times during the show, and we took a break. And I'd like to perhaps conclude on it this week, if at all possible. And I mentioned to you that this is from the book by Imam al-Ghazali, and absolutely amazing book. For those that would love to read a book that is perhaps not the most common resource that people talk about. You know, many people usually they'll say, read about the seerah, read about, the common books that you read when you're going through your Islamic education. This is a little bit more contemporary. This book a little bit newer. And I'm not taking away from any of the books of seerah or anything like that, or tafsir or whatever it may be. Those are a wealth of information and an amazing a necessity. It's the bare minimum, I would say, that you have to read. Like, you can't not read those things. But for those that want to read something different and want to read something because they've already read so much, mashallah, that they're looking for the next amazing book, if you will. Imam al-Ghazali has an amazing amount of publications, and the books are absolutely breathtaking, if you will, and really something that I would very strongly encourage you guys to check out, especially this book on the duties of brotherhood in Islam. It's absolutely riveting, and we'll go over one of the topics that he talks about today, inshallah, and that is loyalty and sincerity. Now, the meaning of loyalty is actually more complicated than one takes for granted. And it actually is to be steadfastness in love and maintaining it to the death with your brother, and after his death with his children and his fellows. For love is for the sake of the other life. It is served before death. The work is in vain and the effort is wasted, right? If it's actually served before death. So by loving someone and being sincere to them and steadfast to them, sometimes we see that this love is for this life here, right? And many a times we really measure this life with so much emphasis that we only look at this life. But when one of our brothers or sisters passes away and the connection is then halted, then this isn't true brotherhood. This isn't the true meaning in Islam. And that it must go on to his children and his fellows, right? And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that among the 7 whom God keeps in his shadow are also two men who love each other for God's sake, constant, whether together or apart. And someone said that a little loyalty after death is better than much during a lifetime. And thus it is related that the Prophet ﷺ said that once gave a hearty welcome to an old woman whom called upon him. And when asked about it, he said, she used to come to us in the days of Khadijah, and honoring true friendship is part of religion. And loyalty to the brother or to the sister includes consideration towards all his fellows, his relatives, and dependents. And to consider these is a greater duty in the heart of a fellow than to consider the brother himself. For his joy and care for those dependents on him is in fact greater. And nothing proves the strength of compassion and love so much as when these carry over from the loved ones to all his dependents. Even the dog at his gates should be distinguished in your heart from all other dogs. And whenever loyalty and sustaining love is broken, Satan takes a malicious delight therein. And for he does not envy two people who assist each other in good works as much as he envies two brothers joined in brotherhood and love for God's sake. And he exerts himself to spoil what is between him. And this is mentioned in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that tell my servants to say that what is kindlier. Surely Satan sets himself at variance. And he said in the story of Yusuf, after Satan had sown discord between me and my brothers. And it is said that if a rupture falls between two who have become brothers in God, this can only be through a sin committed by one of them. And Bishr used to say, when the creature is remiss in obedience to God, then God deprives him of some intimates. And this is because brothers are a distraction from cares and a help in religion. And Ibn al-Mubarak said, the sweetest thing of all is the company of brothers and reverting to sufficiency. And lasting affection is that which is for the sake of God. That which has some other object passes away with the passing of that object. And there are many, many different fruits and benefits of doing so, right? And one fruit of the affection for God's sake is that envy cannot coexist with it. And that's extremely important, right? To avoid this envy, to avoid this, this evil jealousy, if you will. That whether in religion or in the worldly affairs, right? So it's completely indistinguishable. It doesn't make a difference in which one. That how, right? And that's the real question, is that how can one envy one's brother when all the benefit of what is his occurs to oneself? And this is how Allah describes those who love for his sake. And he mentions again in the Quran that they find no need in their breasts for what the others have been given, preferring them above themselves. Finding need, there would be envy. And part of loyalty is not to let the relationship with the brother degenerate into humiliation. And if one acquires importance, sees his authority expanded and his dignity increase, and under these new conditions, lords it over his brother, he is then unworthy. And a very famous poet once said that when the noble enjoy success, they remember those who befriended them in their humble station. And one of the early believers counseled his son with these words. And I really want you guys to take note of these words because it's amazing, amazing fruit. My son, take no man for your fellow unless he draws near you when you need him and is not jealous of you when you can manage without him. And when his station is exalted, he should not lord it over you. Right? Amazing, amazing advice. And there was also another one that a wise man had said, that if your brother acquires a position of authority, yet remains constant in one half of his affection, then that is a great deal. So what we can easily surmise from this is that power and authority and, financial benefit, when it affects the brotherhood, then you should be concerned about this individual and about your relationship with him. And when it doesn't, this is a major glad tiding. And Rabi'a tells Shafi'i, may God have mercy on him, took for a brother a man of Baghdad. And this brother became the governor of Al-Sayban and changed towards him. So Shafi'i wrote to him with these stanzas, right? It's a poem. He wrote him in a poem. And he says, "Be gone, for your affection from my heart is ever free, though not yet by divorce irrevocable. Should you convert, there's been but one repudiation, and your affection still has to go with me. And should you refuse, I'll match it with the like repudiation too, and two immenses too. And when comes my third to you, it will be absolute, useless to you than the governorship of Al-Sayban." And it's extremely important to know that loyalty does not extend to concurring with a brother in what is contrary to the truth in a matter of religion. And indeed, that loyalty then calls for opposition to him. And Shafi'i, may God be pleased with him, took as his brother Muhammad ibn Abdul Hakim, and he was his close and constant companion, and he used to say, "It is only he who keeps me in Egypt." And when Muhammad fell ill, Shafi'i visited him and said, "The dear one fell sick, so I paid him a call. Then I too fell sick from concern over him. And the dear one came to visit me, and I was cured by seeing him." And people expected, in view of the sincerity of their mutual affection, that Shafi'i would entrust to him the leadership of his circle after his death. And then Shafi'i was asked during his death sickness, "At whose feet shall we sit when you are gone, O Abu Abdullah?" And then Muhammad ibn Abdul Hakim, who was by his head, stood forward so that he could indicate him. But Shafi'i said, "Glory be to God, can there be any doubt? Abu Yaqub al-Bawti is the man." Thus Muhammad's estimation was shattered, and the Shafi'i followers turned to al-Bawti. And although Muhammad had learned the whole of his matters teaching, nevertheless al-Bawti was worthier and closer to constance and piety. So Shafi'i was sincere towards God and the Muslims, for he forsook hypocrisy, not preferring the pleasure of the people to the pleasure of Allah. And on his death, Muhammad ibn Abdul Hakim turned away from his school and went back to the school of his father and to the study of the books of Malik, and becoming one of the greatest of the followers of Malik. And al-Bawti preferred abstinence and solitude, and he was not found of company and sitting in the circle. And he occupied himself with worship and compiled Kitab al-Which is now attributed to Rabi ibn Sulaiman and goes under his name, though it was actually al-Bauti who compiled it, and he did not mention himself in it and did not ascribe it to himself. And al-Rabi added to it, edited it, and published it. And the point is that part of the fullness and loyalty and love is sincerity to Allah, right? That no matter what loyalty or how extensive the friendship is, in the end, all sincerity is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Al-Ahnaf said that brotherhood is a subtle essence, and if you do not guard it, it is exposed to misfortunes. So guard it by self-control, even to the point of apologizing to one who has wronged you, and by contentment, so that you do not overrate your own virtues by your brother's failings. And one of the marks of truthfulness, sincerity, and perfect loyalty is to be extremely, and I can't emphasize this enough, is that you have to be extremely wary of separation and instinctively shy of its cause. And it's been said that I found the blow of fate but trivial matters except for the parting of friends. And you have to be really conscientious of it. Like, it's really something that many of us don't really truly understand and don't fully grip. And that's why I feel it's so important to spend time on this issue of brotherhood, because it's very seldomly discussed in such detail. And we really go day by day, minute by minute, hour by hour, week by week, month by month, year by year, and not fully understanding our duties. And again, I'd like to emphasize our duties as brothers and sisters in Islam. We go around the world and we imagine ourselves, as long as we're nice, according to the definition of what nice is, that we're okay. We're nice. And many people use this term nice to really justify anything. I've heard people getting married, and when you ask them about the individual, what's good about him or what's good about this person, oh, he's a real nice guy, or he's a real nice girl, and you're like, what is there anything more to it? And it's like, oh, they're really nice. And it becomes this almost a disease, if you ask me, this word nice. Everyone uses the term nice for anything. As long as we're nice, we'll get into Jannah. As long as we're nice, people will like us. As long as we're, come on. It's such a vague term, yet so much emphasis and so much responsibility is placed on this word. Yet when you ask someone to further describe what does this niceness mean, what does it require for somebody to be nice, you're left with nothing. Oh, he's, and then you see, that if you just ask that follow-up question, what is nice, you find out that chances are they have no idea. The guy just didn't wrong them, or the individual hasn't wronged them. So when we talk about brotherhood in Islam, we're not talking about being nice to your brother. We're all assuming the bare minimum is being nice. But what is brotherhood in Islam? And then we dissect it element by element. And today's element is the loyalty. Loyalty in Islam. And before we conclude, I want to go over loyalty includes not listening to gossip about your friends, especially from one who first pretends to be dear to the friend so as to escape the suspicion, but then speaks at random and conveys things about the friend which disturb the heart. And this is one of the subtlest devices for stirring up strife, for really making animosity. And the affection of one unable to guard against it cannot be lasting at all. And inshallah, we'll conclude with this wise saying from one of the late companions, the late followers in Islam, is that a wise man had said that I have come as a suitor for your affection and have set its dower as 3 things you must do. What are they? Right? Do not listen to gossip about me. Do not oppose me in anything. And do not make me act rashly. Loyalty includes not befriending your friend's enemy. And this is really something that when I was on campus, I would see all the time. Right? And this is something we truly don't understand, right? Especially for the brothers and sisters on campus. Loyalty includes not befriending your friend's enemy, right? This is what it means to be loyalty. One of the final parts about loyalty. And the Shafi'i even mentions this, and he talks about this. So it's to that extent, right? It's not my own personal opinion or the way I choose to live my life. But as Shafi'i said, and may of God have mercy on him, that if your friend obeys your enemy, they share an amenity towards you. Right? And this is a very strong and bold claim. And it's extremely important to take note of it. Right? Because I remember on campus, this was a ongoing issue, and it was, many of them thought it was trivial. This guy didn't do anything to me. Why can't I be his friend anymore? He wronged you, but what's that got to do with me? When it comes to brotherhood and sisterhood in Islam, loyalty is an extremely crucial part. And of the duties of brotherhood, and many of them that we talked about, material assistance, personal aid, holding one's tongue, speaking out, forgiveness, prayer, and what we talked about today, loyalty and sincerity. And inshallah, next week, if Allah permits, we'll conclude on the topic of brotherhood with one further topic. But again, I very strongly recommend that we really go into the bookshelves of the Islamic bookstores and really pick up books that are not commonly read. And I very highly recommend this book here, The Duties of Brotherhood by Imam al-Ghazali, because how can you, and this is what I'll conclude on, is that how can you, as a human being, as a believer in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, go on your day-to-day and not knowing the rights of your brother or the rights of your sister? That's exactly the same like going to work and not knowing what you're supposed to do and not doing anything right and expecting not to get paid, right? But expecting to actually have your job after you've done nothing, right? You made sure your desk was clean because that's common sense, and you had your computer off when you left and you turned your computer on when you started, but you didn't even know what program you're working in. You didn't even know who to submit your work